Hello, folks, and welcome to episode 3 of the podcast app that we are building with Riverpod. And today we have a basic UI looking version of the podcast app. And as you can see, we have Discover, what do you want today, and then we have Popular, and then a list of podcasts here. Okay, so in this tutorial, as I mentioned in the last video, we are going to be looking at Riverpod providers, and today what we want to do is to fetch this data from the backend or from a feature and display it. So how do you use, which provider do you use in Riverpod that will help you achieve this? So this is what I'm going to be showing you now. Okay, here let's look at our project a bit, and we sort of have the basic of our project. And if you can see, if you go to the dependency, we have imported flex color scheme, and this package allows you to theme your app. It gives you a lot of theme options, and you can check it out. You're using the Google Fonts package. We're using this package, which we are going to use to get all our podcast. I'm going to show you what it does. So if you go to pub.dev and let's type in the podcast search, and you can see exactly what it gives you. Okay, so this is the package I'm using. It's basically a library that searches for podcasts. It passes all the RSS feed. It makes a lot of things easy for you, and it pulls them from iTunes or this podcast index. So most of the podcasts that you'll be looking for is in this package. So you can search based on a keyword, you can search based on a country, you can limit and stuff. That's the package that we are going to be using for this tutorial. And then let's look at flex color scheme. It can be overwhelming for this package, but we just want to make beautiful material design based themes. So I don't want to think about theming the app. So let's see. As you can see, if you go to your main app and the theme mode, let's put it to dark, and you see we have a dark mode and we have a light mode, and you can put it to light, and everything works out of the box, and you can change the scheme to something else and it just works for you. Okay, so let's go back, and we are using this cached network image to show the images here, as you can see, so we don't have to load images multiple times. And then this is okay. So let's move ahead, and now we want to use Riverpod, right, to pull all the data. So let's go back a bit in here. So I have a folder called UI, and then in the UI we have the home folder, and then I have my home screen here, which you're looking at right here. And basically it's just a UI, so I'm not gonna deep dive to how it works. So these are the list of podcast items that you're looking like at this. And then if you go to the core folder, there's a service folder, and in here I have the podcast service, which wraps the service. That's the package podcast search. As you can see, it wraps it. Okay, so now let's see how to use Riverpod to fetch this from that package. Let's say it's just from our backend or from an API. Okay, so let's look at get started, and first we need to install Flutter Riverpod. So I'm going to grab both of them and put it here. And next is to put this in our dev dependencies, like you saw in the last video. So let's remove that and then put this in the dev dependency as well. So we have pop get working. Now we can use this code generator anytime. So let's see if all our dependencies are installed. It's still working. Give it a minute. And okay, so if you look back to our podcast service, let's say we want to get charts, which is what we want to look here. We want to get the or we want to search podcasts. So here, by default, we are not passing anything. We just want to get limit our result to 10 podcasts and from any country, and some options as well. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. Okay, so once these are installed, you can go ahead to go to our main.dart. We need to wrap all up in provider scope. As we mentioned, it provides a container for our providers, and you're good to go. Okay, so let's go to podcast service. We want to be able to expose this service and use it anywhere. So I'm gonna create a provider for this, and this is what I'm going to do. So it's going to provide an instance of a podcast service for me anytime I want it, and I can wrap it in provider. So I created a search and then just pass it around here, as you can see. Okay, so we have a podcast service provider. Like I mentioned, if you want to provide some data, you use your provider. Okay, now, so the next one is I want to go home. Here, I want to be able to, each time I come to the home screen, I want to just fetch this list here. So how are you gonna do that? Okay, let's go to this home, and we are going to create a file that is gonna be called home notifier. So I'm gonna call this notifier .dart, and inside this home notifier .dart, I am going to so let's go back here, and you can see it returns a search result. So we want to use this method called search podcast. We will use these ones later, but for this, to get this, we're going to be using search podcast. Just look at it like your HTTP service, which it uses under the hood anyways. So we want to create a method that returns a feature of search results. So, and we want to say, since this one is popular, we want to get popular, or let's just say get trending. Okay, so remember in the last tutorial we are going to be using code generator here, so we will call this get trending ref, and then as a parameter here, and if you see, you can see it's going to be an async because we have feature here. So we are going to say final search. It's basically a podcast service. I just call it podcast service, is equals to ref.read. So we are reading our podcast service provider, the previous provider that we created, and then we will get the result from our podcast service, get charts, and then we return the result. So let's import this search result as well. Now remember, you need to annotate this. So with this, Riverpod will automatically create a feature provider for you. So let's run this code generator. And before that, you need to create a path file so that your generated code will go in here. Okay, we create a new file called home_notifier.g.dart. Okay, so let's save that and then go to our terminal, and then we can do this code generation. And it's going to run. It's going to create the path file for us. And you can see how we are going to use that. Okay, so it was created home notifier.g.dart, and you can see it creates an auto dispose feature provider. So yeah, pretty good if you ask me. So now that we have created that, how do we use that in our UI? So let's go to our UI, which is home.dart. So as I mentioned, if you want to watch a provider, you can extend a consumer widget. And it's going to take another argument here, which is widget ref. So with this ref, you can do a watch. So which we can say final get trending ref equals to ref.watch. So we don't know the name of the provider, but if you go to home_notifier.g.dart, you can see this is the name of the provider. And we can copy that and put it here. And then we can import home notifier here. So now we have the get trending ref. If you hover, you can see that it's an async value of type search results. So how do we use it? So when it gives you an async value, you have some certain methods in there that you can use, which is let's see, get trending ref dot. When you do a dot, you can see you have a couple of options. You have your .when. So we are going to be using this .when because .when has a couple of methods. It has data, it has error, and it has loading. So you can see it, if you check documentation, it makes sense. So we are going to be using that so that you can handle all these cases. It's a couple of cases that you can handle. And here we are just going to return, in the data, we're just going to return podcast section. So instead of the dummy data that we have here, we can safely remove that dummy here. Now in the loading section, we can just return a circle progress indicator. In the error section, you can do whatever you like to do here. You can handle your error on the UI correctly. You can make these retry button that is going to call the provider again, whatever you want to do. But for now, we're going to keep it simple. And here, we are just passing the data from the results. Let's just call it results, and just passing it to the podcast section UI that we have. And when we save that, and let's run our app. Okay, it's showing bad state because we have not restarted the app when we added provider scope. So let's run this again, and you can see our circle progress indicator. And then we have our podcast, and you can see I have all the podcasts here. Yay! So we have able to use a feature provider. So basically that's how to use a feature provider. And you can see how easy it is to do that. Just writing this small piece of code and you are good to go. And you can add more options. So in future, as we build this app, so let's say if you check the method here, you may want to pass in a country. You can say trending in Nigeria or trending in Canada. Or you can pass an argument that says maybe it's explicit. Or you can pass a genre. Maybe you want to just get sports, or you want to get entertainment podcast on the homepage. We can modify this provider to have arguments, to have family modifiers. Before I go, I wanted to talk to you about my upcoming class at Lighthall. I'm going to be teaching you how to code for just $20 for the entire class. If you're in Nigeria, you can pay Naira when you want to check out. So basically, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 classes, and each class is 2 hours. 2 times 8 will give you 16 hours of Flutter. So I'm going to be teaching you how to build a full app, and it's totally beginners friendly. I've put some instruction in the about if you are just getting started, and you're going to be learning advanced state management. Basically, I am building a simpler version of this podcast in this tutorial, but in these 8 weeks, we are going to be building a full app, and you can see strategies to make your development easier. So go ahead and sign up, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.